All right, so let me tell you a story. So every single Friday night, as soon as I got back from school, there was only one thing on my mind, and that was logging onto Discord and hopping on Rainbow Six Siege with the boys. So I remember these Friday night sessions really fondly, man. Like, imagine you had a tough week at school. All you want to do is just hop on games for a couple of hours, de-stress, not take ourselves too seriously. It was the best. And the funny thing was, in class, I'd be this ultra quiet, low confidence kid. But as soon as I went on games with the guys, like, I'd turn into this super loud, almost extroverted kind of person. Like, I'd be shouting and screaming down the mic, making all of these wild jokes. I'd turn into someone completely different. But then on a few occasions, I remember one of my friends inviting someone else to the party, maybe one of their friends from another class who I didn't know that well. And I'd instantly go from being that extroverted guy right back to being that super shy, kind of awkward teenager. And my friends would call me out on it. Like, they'd ask, why are you being so quiet? Why aren't you saying anything? And the truth was, I wasn't trying to be unfriendly. I just didn't know what the hell to say to this person. You know, I'd be sitting there thinking, I don't actually know this person. I don't know anything about their life. How do I even begin to have a conversation with them? What would that even look like? And I remember I'd be sitting there absolutely racking my brain for something to say, like something intelligent or a way of opening this conversation. And I'd just get absolutely nowhere. I'd just be so utterly stumped for what to say. And whenever I did actually try to make small talk with this person, it would just come across as if it's like a little bit random, or I'm forcing particular topics, and it just felt really awkward to me. And I remember thinking that the reason I don't have anything to talk about must be because I have a boring life. I don't have any interesting experiences to talk about, or like I don't do anything exciting with my time. And that was kind of true. Like, my routine at the time was pretty much go to school, come back and watch content or play games. That was it. But then I realized, like, yeah, maybe I did have a boring life, but my life was no less interesting than any of my friends. Like, they were all kind of doing the same shit, yet they still had plenty of things to talk about. And I kind of thought for a moment, like, actually, I hear people just having conversations about a whole lot of nothing all the time. Like, people are having the most mundane conversations in school, yet they'll act like it's super interesting. Like, I remember these two guys in my maths class, and they literally had like a half an hour long debate about what the best type of glue stick was. Because it actually kind of proves to me that if you find a conversation that you're both interested in, it doesn't matter if it's like the most boring or obscure topic. If you're both interested in it, you could probably just talk about it forever. Like, you'd never run out of things to say. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I realized that the difficult part of conversation is not actually the deep part, the part where you found something to talk about. It's actually the awkward small talk phase that comes before, the part where you're still finding your feet in the conversation or getting to know each other. Because really the point of small talk is for it not to remain as small talk. It's supposed to be like a gateway into a more fun, deep conversation between the two of you. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to break through those more awkward phases of small talk and actually get to the fun, interesting, deep conversations. So I'm going to go through the two most common mistakes that I've seen guys making that are absolutely tanking your small talk and how you can fix them. So the first mistake I see guys making when it comes to small talk is answering questions too literally. So let's say you've just sat down next to someone in class who you don't know that well. You know, you've said hi, you've asked, how has your day been? They responded with, yeah, it was good. And then they ask you the same question. So the biggest, most amateur mistake you could make in that situation is to respond like he did, to answer that question very literally and just say, I'm good. So the problem with these 1 or 2 word answers is you've effectively closed off all avenues to take the conversation in. Like, it's pretty much done there. So what you want to do is give a more descriptive answer. You know, give him some information to work with. Answer in a way which almost prompts him to ask even more questions and go deeper. So there's this technique I learned about in this book called Models by Mark Manson. And that's this idea of leaving breadcrumbs for the other person, of inserting little bits of information of leaving them a trail of information, of topics that they can choose to explore further, that they can use to take this conversation in like a number of different directions. And the reason this works so well is because it's a way of naturally letting the conversation evolve rather than just like spamming topics, like throwing topics out there and awkwardly changing the conversation a bunch of times and it feeling kind of forced. So the breadcrumbs in this case are things like actions or activities or places or, emotions that you're feeling. You're almost telling a little bit of a story in your response. So this guy could ask me how my day's been, and I could say, oh, I'm kind of tired, man. Like, I had this maths class with a really boring teacher and he was making me do algebra, and I don't understand algebra. But it was kind of good because I was sitting next to this kid and we were talking about football, and I like football. So that's kind of a shit example. But what we're doing is we're leaving those breadcrumbs. These are all potentially different things that this guy could choose to pursue further, to ask you another question about, to go deeper. And what will happen in most cases is because you've been bothered enough to open up about your life, to, share more than the bare minimum, he'll start to feel comfortable opening up with you and start to share more about his life. And then you'll really get the ball rolling. So what you've got to remember is, even in some cases where it feels like the other person isn't making as much of an effort as you, or like they're kind of disinterested, what you have to keep in mind is that everyone is in the same position as you. Pretty much everyone on the planet doesn't really like small talk, finds it kind of awkward, and doesn't actually know how to pull it off in the right way. So with that knowledge in mind, that like pretty much everyone hates small talk, surely the least we can do is to make it as easy as possible for them, to actually give them some information to work with. Every time they ask you a question, just exchange as much information as you can, like just make it easy as possible for them to continue this conversation. So the second massive mistake that I see people making when it comes to small talk is asking the wrong kind of questions. And this one is kind of the inverse of what we were just talking about. So I've noticed that a lot of people, when they're kind of nervous in this small talk phase, or they're running out of things to say, they'll just start throwing questions at the other person. They're just absolutely spamming all these questions, and it's kind of overwhelming for them. Like, they think it's kind of weird. Like, why is this guy interviewing me? Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with questions themselves, but ideally, they need to lead somewhere. There has to be a reason for these questions. Otherwise, it's just interview mode. So a rule that I have for questions in small talk is that they have to open a new path. They have to lead to a new discussion or develop the conversation in some way, rather than just leading you down a dead end. So you want to be asking open questions, open-ended questions that can't be answered with like a yes or no answer. So an example of a closed question is, do you like rap music? So if they say no in that situation, then the conversation is as good as dead. So you want to reframe that into like a more open-ended question, like, what's a song you've been listening to on repeat for like the last month? Or what song can you not get enough of right now? You see, there's potential in that question for them to give a more interesting answer. There's like so many potential conversations that could lead from this question. So if you're going to ask questions, then try and make them more open-ended. And the second part of this, the other massive mistake I see people making when it comes to asking questions, is this. So do you know the quickest way to absolutely kill off a conversation, to absolutely tank it with no chance of recovering, is to fake interest in what the other person is saying? So many people, probably people who've listened to this social skills advice of let the other person talk more, or, ask loads of questions, they are completely fucking this up because they're asking questions with no meaning, asking all these filler questions that they don't actually care about like hearing the answer to. And the reason this is so bad is because if you're not invested in this topic, if you have no interest in what the other person is saying, then there's no chance this conversation will last longer than 5 minutes. And the reason for that is you're going to look disinterested. Even if you're trying to pretend to them that you're interested in what they're saying, it will come through. It will just come across as fake. The other person will start thinking that you're disingenuous because you're feigning interest in them, but really you look bored. And then they're going to start questioning your intentions. Like, why is this guy talking to me when clearly he's not even interested in what I've got to say? And I know this might come across as somewhat backwards advice, but if you have zero interest in this topic, if you're really not interested in the slightest, then I'd honestly just advise you force a different topic. Take the conversation in a different direction. And I know some people will say this is rude, but if you really aren't interested, then that is mutually beneficial. Because you'll come across as more rude by pretending to be interested even when you're bored. Like you're going to kill the conversation doing that. So at least turn it into something you're actually interested about. Or better yet, you can think deeply about this topic, even if it's something that you don't know that much about. Just take a few moments to actually consider, what am I curious to learn about? What do I want to know more about this particular topic? And ask a question based on that. And again, even if you know absolutely zero about this topic, try and think of something. Like, you could still ask them about their perspective, why they feel a certain way, or any random memory or anecdote you have that could relate to this topic in any way. Just get it out there. Just start asking questions that you're genuinely curious to find out about. And the reason this is so much better than just faking interest is because at least the other person can sense you're being authentic, that you're being sincere, that the question is coming from a place of genuine curiosity. And at worst, it will make them feel like they're more important, like they're someone actually worth listening to. And, it betters your chance of actually having an engaging conversation. So those are the 2 steps. If you keep practicing these, you'll find yourself hitting that flow, that deep, natural conversation, finding that common ground so much quicker. This small talk that you used to find really awkward and kind of uncomfortable, it will start to feel effortless. Like, it's much easier for me now than it used to be. But yeah, that is all from me today, bro. Hope this helped. I will see you in the next one.